So I thought I'd chime in a little bit now that we have a little bit more on the details of this deal. Obviously, with the podcast that was posted this morning, it was at the beginning stages here. And look, I've made myself clear. I think that sometimes you declare victory and walk away, and that there was that was and the two arguments to make here. The best argument for the deal is as follows. It is, we're dealing with a president who's putting holding hungry people hostage and the traveling public hostage. Yes, you're not supposed to give in to hostage takers like this and just capitulate. If you give a mouse a cookie, et cetera, et cetera. But are they total capitulation, or are you buying a 6-week pause? Right? A good leader of the Senate Democrats would say, nobody's caved into anything. We just decided that this is not the time for people to be starving. This is not the time to keep people from getting their SNAP benefits. This is not the time to disrupt the traveling public. So we're going to go ahead and pause this fight for the next 6 weeks. We're going to have this debate about the extension of the healthcare subsidies. And if they don't do it, we've got another opportunity to shut the government down again at the start of the year. That would be how you would message it if you were trying to be a leader of your entire party. The other argument is, hey, look, this has gone much better than expected. The party may have been looking for a pretext to have this confrontation with the Trump administration. I have said before, this is really about the fact that the Trump administration doesn't accept the premise that Congress is in charge of spending and taxing. And he obviously, he alone wants to fix it. He alone wants to deal with it. If he can't be trusted, why should the Democrats capitulate and help him dismantle the federal government the way he's doing, et cetera? And it goes to, and hey, and I guess the best argument you could make was, look at all of the unforced errors he's already making. He literally went to court to try to stop SNAP funding, to stop the extension of benefits or states to filling in the gaps on SNAP benefits. He actually went to court to prevent poor people from getting access to aid in order to go to the grocery store and try to afford groceries. So, and you've got a Speaker of the House who's completely abdicated leadership during this shutdown fight. So a fight that could have boomeranged and put Democrats sort of in a more negative light has actually put Republicans in a more negative light, right? That's the best argument. But the question was, it's like you're sitting at a blackjack table. You've been on a hell of a run. You've made the point you want to make. You've got healthcare front and center in the minds of voters. You've got the Trump administration deciding not to stand with the people that he tried to stand with in 2024. The working people, the people who were struggling to afford groceries, making affordability the North Star of his campaign, only to walk away from that. He cares more about the naming rights of this football stadium and the naming rights to his own ballroom and making more crypto money, et cetera. So it is, I get the arguments that can be made here. What's going to be interesting to watch, and certainly I think that there is, I think that that these 8 Democrats that did this, I think you can make an argument that there's a long game here that is still politically effective. It allows the Democrats to both be fighting for health care and to project themselves as the adult in the room party. Somebody's got to play the adult. It's clear there are no adults on the MAGA side of the ledger. I firmly believe that the reason why an Abigail Spanberger and a Mikey Sherrill won in landslides is because they are viewed by independent voters as not captured by some political partisan base, but that there will be the adult in the room when it matters. That in some ways the risk-averse nature of both of their campaigns, which some people thought was not firing people up, actually seemed to work extraordinarily well. So that if you can walk that line of both fighting the Trump administration where it matters, but being the adult in the room when it matters, it is possible. But of course, none of these messaging gymnastics that I'm describing here, whichever side of the ledger you're on, there is terrible leadership right now. The congressional leadership is just doing a terrible job of messaging what they want from this shutdown and what did they want from perhaps agreeing to pausing the shutdown for 6 weeks. Again, a more nimble, I think a Bill Clinton or a Barack Obama would easily be saying, or even a Harry Reid, this this is a pause in this battle. This is not a capitulation. But I think it's the thing that I'm learning in these 24 hours where there's heavy blowback from the left. And it's not just progressives. Anybody on the ballot in 2026 Democrat, even somebody like an Angie Craig, who's definitely more of a center-left Democrat, who's in the suburbs of the Twin Cities, and she's running for the U.S. Senate in a primary that's more dominated by progressives, right? She's come out against this deal. Pretty much anybody on the ballot in 2026 on the Democratic side is against this deal. I think that's your vote of no confidence in Chuck Schumer as leader. The fact that he doesn't seem to have the credibility with the left, nor the credibility with call him the center left pragmatists, to figure out how to message this as a unifying deal. If this continues to get messy over the next few weeks, and you have more and more of a revolt, and I don't know what this looks like. Is it going to benefit the party that come January, they have a different leader negotiating, when it comes to keeping the government open in January, dealing, how you negotiate for the extension of these Obamacare subsidies? Do they need a different leader up top messaging? This episode of the Chuck ToddCast is brought to you by Wild Grain. Wild Grain is the first bake from frozen subscription box for artisanal breads, seasonal pastries, and fresh pastas. Plus, all items conveniently bake in 25 minutes or less. Unlike many store-bought options, Wild Grain uses simple ingredients you can pronounce and a slow fermentation process that can be easier on your belly and richer in nutrients and antioxidants. Wild Grain's boxes are fully customizable. They're constantly adding seasonal and limited time products for you to enjoy. In addition to their classic box, they now feature a gluten-free box and a plant-based box. I checked out the gluten-free box, and let me tell you, they have a gluten-free sourdough bread. We got 2 loaves of it, and we've done 1 loaf already. It's a cranberry and almond sourdough bread. It's like the best raisin bread you've ever had, except it's not raisins. It's hit or miss if you mess around in the gluten-free bread world. This is a hit. This is well done. It's not heavy. It doesn't feel like a rock. Anyway, I was impressed. So look, for a limited time, Wild Grain is offering our listeners $30 off your first box, plus free croissants in every box when you go to wildgrain.com/ToddCast to start your subscription. $30 off your first box when you go to wildgrain.com/ToddCast. That's wildgrain.com/ToddCast, or simply use the promo code ToddCast at checkout. Always use the code, get the discount. I'm telling you, it's excellent, excellent bread, because I think what we're seeing is in this sort of, frankly, there's no messaging being filled in here to sort of be a unifying messenger. Does Schumer, because he seems to be still holding out some sort of ambition to stay in the Senate, to run again in 28, to appease progressives? Is that what's going on here? Is he? It is unclear, but I do think the fact that there doesn't seem to be a lot of trust in him, either in him as a messenger or in him as a leader in deciding when to fight and when not to fight, is putting the party in a place where essentially the grassroots are going to be the messengers here, and there's not even going to be anybody attempting to make the case that, hey, this strategy could be good for everybody here, and let me explain why. But in some ways, Schumer has already burned up all his political capital with both the left and the pragmatic center left. And, that's where You wonder, do they need a better messenger here? Do they need, and I'm trying to think of, is it would a Brian Schatz, um, who sort of, I think, is nobody would mistaken him for a centrist. At the same time, he's sort of a governing pragmatist, with some bite. Would Schatz be the better sort of leader of these folks in this moment? Is he the guy? I would have made an argument for Michael Bennet, as the potential sort of North Star here, but he is, of course, running for governor in 2026. And while he's still a sitting senator, I can tell you, I've talked with Democratic senators who have said that they were hoping Michael Bennet would be the next leader. That is no longer going to be the case. But I do wonder if, can Schumer really stay publicly just against this deal and then credibly be the person negotiating the next time this comes around? Can he credibly sell the deal that he voted against and still be seen as the credible representative for the party when these negotiations happen again in January? So if nothing else, and again, I've echoed, many of you have heard me a lot on this, that I think that they've gotten everything they could get out of this shutdown. There's every single shutdown that is instigated by a minority party always ends this way, which is, oh, you're taking the deal that was on the table 6 weeks earlier. It always ends this way. In this case, Democrats got more out of this shutdown in public opinion than any other party has gotten in some time, when they've tried this in the past. So, and it may be good individually for different senators and base politics that they've been able to sort of separate themselves from the quote establishment wing of the Democratic Party. So I think there's been some aspects there. But at some point, you've got to sort of, this is the case where I think you can make your point, be the adult in the room, and have another bite at this apple in 6 weeks. A more trusted and nimble leader of the Senate Democrats would be able to make this argument and could keep both wings of the party sort of at peace. That instead, you turn this into, this is the mistake. If they somehow snatch defeat from the jaws of victory here, this is on the Democrats. And in some ways, it's on the leadership of the party. They are winning. And and look, just staying shut down, actually, I think had a lot more risk here than temporarily agreeing to open the government and putting this fight off until January while you didn't get involved. Because here's the thing that I think sometimes partisan activists forget. There's a whole chunk of voters that only notice government the same way they only notice the plumbing in their house when it doesn't work. But when their plumbing works, they pay no attention to it. But when the plumbing doesn't work, when the toilet's clogged, oh my God, everything stops. And a government shutdown is like is clogging the toilet. At some point, it's going to touch people that normally don't pay attention to politics. And they're just going to be angry at everybody. And while that probably is a net benefit to the Democrats, since it is Republicans in charge of all aspects of government right now, it is one of those things that can boomerang on all incumbents if you're not careful here. So being the party on the side of unclogging the toilet through Thanksgiving and Christmas, but at the same time still having a moment where you can hold them accountable about the healthcare subsidies in January, I don't see how that's a loss. And it's only a loss if you're more interested in making a point rather than trying to win over skeptical Americans about how government works as it is. But I will say this, the initial 12 hours of reaction and the anger that is coming from the left on this, I'm really wondering, I really think it's exposing just how weak, tenuous right now Schumer's hold is on, he's right now feels like a leader in name only. He's got the title, but is he in charge? And can he convey a message that somehow unifies where Democrats are in this moment? And right now, It doesn't look like, especially the fact that he and Jeffries are not going to end up on the same page again, which is not a good place for a party to be. So with that, I just thought I'd add my a few extra 2 cents to what I said earlier today, and we'll see. But I think if I were putting looking for a new bet to put on Kalshi or the poly markets, will Chuck Schumer be Senate Democratic leader by February 1st of 2026? It's still more likely than not. You don't necessarily want to have a leader. But if this stays this ugly as it's felt the first 12 hours, anything is possible. Catch you later.